we doing today, boys and girls? It's your boy Iron Wings 3187 coming at you with another Iron Wings reviews. Today, I thought I'd go ahead and do a bit of an old versus new comparison video. Now, the reason I broached this or brought this up, decided on this video, I should say, if you'll excuse my workspace, I kind of got commissioned on a project by a neighbor of mine. He has recently, due to a death in his family, inherited a Winchester Model 94 and has no 30-30 ammo, so I have to start doing some reloading for him. He provided me the primers, but since I already need to reload some 30-30 because I'm running low myself, I decided I'd throw a few in for him. Anyway, what brought me to this subject today is that about a year ago I was out trap shooting with my Mossberg Model 500. It's kind of long been the gold standard of good quality at a reasonable price. I actually have a bit of a deeper connection to the Mossberg 500, being the very first gun I ever owned. I bought a Mossberg 500, actually this exact Mossberg 500, when I was 16 years old from a relative for around about $200 worth of silver. And at the time, he included a set of Hogue plastic furniture and the field barrel, which is not currently on the table. So, this is actually the original furniture. It came with the original receiver, magazine tube, basically everything except the barrel and a couple of smaller parts I'll show you in a bit are original on this shotgun. But about a year ago, I was out in the field shooting trap, and all of a sudden, I would shoot one round, and the next one in the tube magazine would eject under recoil. Everywhere I read online that this is a failure for loading, but again, I've been operating this particular shotgun for the better part of almost a decade. So I'm very experienced in both loading, unloading, the operation. I'm basically at this point an expert operator at this shotgun. Just to show you guys, it is empty. Don't know if you can see that, but trust me, it is. I especially unloaded this one because this is my dog defense gun, because we have a neighbor that keeps letting their pit bulls run loose, and I need something that I can put a whole lot of lead downrange real quick with, and this one has a Mossberg 500 slug barrel on it. So I keep this loaded with slugs. Anyway, beside the point, I'm well experienced with this, so I know it's not my loading that's actually causing this issue. Instead, I believe that it is the fact that the cartridge stop and the cartridge interrupter that are worn down. So I call Mossberg and they tell me it's going to be about $20 to replace the two parts. But I also don't just want to keep calling Mossberg for spare parts, because this is a 20-year-old shotgun. Eventually they are because there are very few part differences between the new and old models. But there are little tweaks here and there that will eventually mean if they run out of spare parts for this one, I'm going to either need to get rid of this or trade it in and get a newer model through Mossberg. So I went down to my local gun shop for just ammo or whatever. I can't remember what I was looking for. I actually think it was I went down to pick up another rifle that I bought, and on the wall they had this. A 2020 production, brand new Mossberg 500 in 12 gauge. The exact same model as this one, but almost 25 years newer than this original model of mine. It was a field and deer combo, which came with the slug barrel that's now currently on my old model, and a 28-inch field barrel for shooting birds. A full bore choke. Something like that, a full choke, basically. You can't put a dime down the muzzle. So when I got these two, I decided I was going to do a old versus new comparison, because, like I said, this shotgun was originally made based on the serial number in 1997, and a relative of mine who I bought it from, my uncle, purchased it in 1997 or 1998 from a Las Vegas Walmart. So I wanted to see because everyone says they don't make them like they used to. I wanted to see if this is a true adage and how much Mossberg's manufacturing and quality control standards have changed in the 25 intervening years since this model was made. So, to start with, first thing I have to say, if I'm going to make this a fair comparison, I can't compare the action of these two shotguns because that justifiably would not be right of me to do. You're talking about a gun that is brand new off the factory line and has only had about a box of light bullet shot through it just to make sure it functions. As opposed to a well-worn field shotgun that has had God knows how many rounds of birdshot, buckshot, slugs, mini shells. Basically any combination of 12-gauge shells currently in manufacture have been through that 25-year-old Mossberg with more shells than I can count. I think I actually lost count at something around 5,000, roughly-ish, that I've put through this in about 10 years. Whereas this one, about 25 rounds. So, while I will say that this, the action on this new Mossberg seems sluggish, it seems stiff, I won't hold it against it because I have been using this gun for a decade. And it's just buttery smooth at this point from being worn in. There's hardly any resistance, there's hardly any interacting metal that isn't completely rubbed smooth inside that mechanism, so I can understand why I think that this newer model is going to be grittier, more rough. So I won't hold it against that, but there are some quality control issues that did jump out at me from 25 years ago to now. And we'll go ahead and start off with the stock and the fit and finish. So, as you can see on the first the first shotgun in front of you, my older one, this is not the original staining of the furniture. This is actually something I did about a year ago because when I was a teenager, I carved my initials into the stock of it. It got dinged up. It was kept in my safe for about 5 years because my dad owned this shotgun, used it for home defense, and he preferred the Hogue shotgun grip and stock over my wood furniture here. So, about a year ago, I kind of got tired of looking at that ugly initial I carved into the stock. Got tired of looking at the dents and dings, so I stripped the stock, re-stained it, and refinished it very lightly because I like this old, worn-in, rustic look that it has to it. Now, one of the things you will notice when it comes to this shotgun, let me see if I can get a better angle for this, is the stock here is not a perfect fit, but it has very little space between the receiver and the stock itself. Whereas the modern production shotgun, look at all that empty space between the trigger guard, the receiver, and that stock. There is the ability for me to take a very weak pin light I keep on my keys, shine it through, and you can see sunlight or that flashlight between the gaps in this receiver and the stock. So, fit, mind, these are not incomparable shotguns. This is not like me saying, well, my old shotgun was so much better fitted. This is after because this was the first gun I ever refinished, like stock-wise. This Mossberg has a much smaller stock because I, instead of stripping the old finish off of it, sanded the old finish off of it. So it's actually much smaller, and for that reason, somewhat a little bit looser of a fit. Originally, you would be hard-pressed to remove that trigger guard from the stock because it was so well fit in. This Mossberg that I have, the new one, you can actually wiggle the trigger guard while it's pinned in place. And that is very worrisome to me because if Mossberg lets that kind of quality control slip through their factory, it is a little bit troubling that they've started to let their standards slip a little. But At the same time, I will kind of cut them a little bit of slack because this shotgun was produced during the pandemic. There was very little in the way of skilled labor still being able to operate, and as such, I can understand if quality slipped a little bit during the pandemic. But that being said, going forward, I will be looking at other Mossbergs in my local gun shop, and if they all continue to show signs of this quality control error, I can't really recommend going with the factory original furniture from Mossberg because they already have a notorious issue of splitting the trigger guards that are made out of polymer, let alone one with excessive space between the stock and the receiver, which causes it causes that recoil to amplify because there's an empty space that allows it to smack back. There's not as much cushion for that recoil. So, other than that, you also have the fact that the screws on the top of the receiver, I won't bring this up to the camera, you'll have to trust my word for it because I don't think you want to hear my voice screaming at you again. These screws, there are 4 screws on the top of the receiver for this Mossberg 500. And on this factory original, they are a little buggered up. By that I mean that there's a little bit of squashing, a little bit of mushrooming of the screw head because I tightened them up when I was younger, not realizing what they were for, and didn't use the proper screw head for it. I just used a regular screwdriver instead of a more appropriate gunsmithing screwdriver. Those screws, for those of you who don't know, is meant for rails and mounting optics on the top of this Mossberg if you do have this slug barrel. And on this new production one, they just came from the factory buggered up and like stripping the head almost. And it's not very major, but again, it's the fact that it's the little things on a shotgun like this where I get it, it's budget, but Mossberg has long held a standard for good quality, has a very good reputation, and most companies like that today that I know of don't willingly like to sacrifice their reputation unless they're named Remington. So there's that, there's the fact that the wood looks extremely cheap, and again, I kind of have to write this off, but when I first got this shotgun, the wood was very glossy, very well maintained, very good looking. Whereas this, it's very plain, very almost plastic looking. You can tell it's wood because every here and there there's pock marks and scratches in the stock. But otherwise, there's no gloss to it, there's no sheen. It looks plasticky, like something you'd find in a 99-cent store toy aisle. They did improve on one part that I always had an issue with for my original Mossberg, and that being, you can see on this original, my old one, the entire bolt carrier group is unblued, and I have no clue why that is. I can understand the cartridge elevator being unblued, minimal amount of interference between loading the shell and unloading, so I can understand that. Not bluing the cartridge elevator, but on the old one, I never quite understood why the bolt face wasn't blued, let alone the entire bolt body. You'd think on a shotgun that would kind of be the one part of the mechanism you would want blued, because that part is going to be what's exposed to moisture through the ejection port, and you want it to be as resistant as possible because that's what's going to be interacting with the inside of this mechanism. So if it gets rusted up, if it gets corroded, like this original one that I have did when I brought it inside and exposed it to my swamp cooler, it's going to either jam the gun or it's going to make it work much slower and more inefficient. So I will say that Mossberg did do a good job in bluing and finishing both the cartridge elevator and the bolt on this shotgun. Another issue that I can't really show you because I'm not about to load a live round of ammo in this shotgun, but I think I can probably put a photo into the video somewhere here. When you load the first round into this Mossberg, you go to load it in, and you get about to the brass hole, I guess you could call it, the actual case head, and right as you're about to push it in for the first round, it gets caught on the, I don't know if it's the cartridge elevator, if it's the actual shell stopping cartridge interrupter. I don't know what it is, but there is something in here that binds the entire mechanism up, and you have to sit there and like mess with the shell to try and get it to go into that magazine tube all the way. Another thing, for some reason, they just kind of went with this plain magazine follower. I don't understand why. It's kind of, I think, the same magazine follower as they have in the Maverick 88. But I always prefer the Mossbergs to the Maverick 88s because it has this, I can't really show you again, but it's a basically mirror image of the crimp of a shotgun shell. So if you have a standard bird shot load with the star crimp on the top, the Mossberg's follower is designed to have a spike that slips right into that little star crimp center and like help you center and align the shotgun shell much better, more positively. So there's quite a few quality control issues that are just minor that I've seen with this Mossberg that I think are worth pointing out. Do I think that affects overall the quality of the shotgun itself? Not particularly, because you can buy non-factory furniture. You can buy Hogue stocks, Hogue foregrips. You can get a new set of screws from Mossberg, or you can send it back in because Mossberg's actually very good with their warranty. But I just don't think that a company that has been part of American history since before World War II, that is still family-owned, I mean, I'm just noticing this now. There's actually glue from where they fitted this buttstock, the recoil pad, just out underneath, onto the stock and around the sides of the recoil pad. It's little things like that that tell me that standards are starting to slip over at Mossberg and Sons. And I find that problematic, and I dislike using that term, because this is kind of how it got started with Remington. Remington started letting little things slip here and there, and before you know it, they make something like the R51. I'm not saying that's the route Mossberg's going to go down, but I really do think that if my beat-up 25-year-old model Mossberg has a better stock fit, has better feeding mechanisms, basically is in much better condition, I think, than your modern production shotgun, I think there's something wrong going on at the factory. And even if I give you a little bit of leeway in that 2020 and 2021 were a hell of a year to be a gun manufacturer, not only because of Joe Biden taking over, but because of product shortages and labor shortages, you think that would make you focus your efforts, instead of putting more guns out there for cheaper or lower quality, focusing your efforts and making a higher quality and better quality controlled shotgun. There is no excuse why I can feel like I can get my thumbnail catching on the stock between the receiver and the stock wrist. There's no reason I should be able to see light through the stock and receiver being connected. There's no reason why my optic rail mount screws should come with almost stripped out screw heads. And I've written to Mossberg about this. I've called them with very little results. So this is not me bitching and moaning saying that I'm hoping they'll pay attention to this. But if you are listening, someone who's employed by Mossberg, who watches, anything like that, I love your products. I've been shooting them since I was 12 years old. There's a reason why this was the first gun I bought and not a Yugo Mauser that I currently own or a Mosin Nagant, because I loved your shotgun. I still do. This is one that I don't break out too often, and I want to save to give to my son, when he turns 12 or 13. But you can do better than this. You know you can. We've all had a rough couple of years, but that is not an excuse for letting your standards slip when you had such a high standard before. You've been through hard times. You can do better than this. So please, Mossberg, don't let your standards slip. Fix this before it gets out of control or before it gets to an issue. Because this may be a lemon. This may be a shotgun where I didn't realize it was like this and you guys just missed it coming out of the factory. But still, this shouldn't have come out of your factory. You shouldn't have missed this. You know, what else can I say? You're looking at a shotgun that's 25 years old, has a completely refinished stock, and whose only issue in that 25 years is a single part made out of stamped spring steel finally wore out after God knows how many shotgun shells were through it. With this, I don't feel like shooting anything more powerful than like low power game loads or birdshot through it, because I don't want to crack my trigger guard. I don't want to break the stock or snap the wrist of it. So please, do better. You know you can. With that, I hope you guys have enjoyed this review and enjoyed my talk. Again, could I recommend buying a modern Mossberg 500? Yes, because again, you can get aftermarket stocks, you can get replacement screws from Mossberg. The only issue I have with this shotgun I don't really think you can address is the issue with feeding, but even then you could probably call Mossberg and see about warranting it out to them. But do have this caveat emptor buyers beware warning right here, because you need to make sure you inspect it and make sure you're getting the quality that Mossberg promised, not what they are delivering based on this. So with that, this has been Iron Wings 3187. I'm signing off. Thank you for watching. Hit the like button down below. Subscribe if you can, and hey, if you like these videos, I got plenty more gun reviews on my channel coming up.